My name is Christian Schoen, and I'm the director for Cries of the Jungle. Cries of the Jungle is a documentary that tells the story of Ivan and Doris Schoen's ministry to the indigenous tribes of Indians in the jungles of Suriname, South America.
My call came through the death of those 5 missionaries who were speared by the Auca Indians in Ecuador back in 1956. All this time that we were in Bible school, we were corresponding with mission organizations and missionaries and trying to get as much information as we could about the mission field, because we felt definitely that God wanted us on the mission field in a pioneer kind of missionary service. At any rate, we learned of this new mission field in Suriname, South America, where there were several tribes of Indians who had not yet been contacted with the gospel, who were living way back in the jungle, where there were no roads, no railroads, no airstrips. The only way of getting to these villages was along the rivers. And these were people who had absolutely no knowledge of God, had no written languages, and knew very little of the world beyond the jungle in which they were living. People were steeped in superstition and witchcraft, but the Lord opened that door for us, and we were able to raise our support. And by this time we had 3 children, so we left in 1961.
My name is Daniel Schoen. I am Dr. Ivan and Doris Schoen's eldest son. Dad and Mom took all 3 of us in 1961 to Suriname, South America. At the time it wasn't known as Suriname, it was Dutch Guyana. And it was a protectorate, a colony, if you will, of the Dutch. And it stayed that way until 1975, but that's where I grew up. I grew up with Indians, and Dad and Mom took us back in the jungle at a young age. In that time frame, things were very different than they are today. In 2012, probably a story that illustrates that the most would be when we were passing out the Old Testament that Dad had just completed translation, and I believe that was April 2012, if I recall correctly, that there was the most interesting thing happened in church. One of the old elders, one of the people that when I was 4 years old was just a young buck, but ultimately ended up as an elder in the church, very elderly man now, sitting off to the side up front in the hut church that the Wayana Indians there in Apatina have. He stood up and he interrupted the whole process, and he walked to the front and he said to everyone out there, he said, because the church was full of children, and he said, I have to tell you something that you don't know. He said, when Ivan, Rossi, Doris, and Inamo Ropenom, their kids, came back in the old days, he said, we were killing all of you. And all these kids were like, what are you talking about? What's the old elder telling us? He said, no, that's the way it was. That's the way it was. We were killing all of you. He said, but today, because of Jesus and because they brought Jesus, look at the church. It's full of children. And so that's a pretty good way to illustrate. The Indians killed 85% of their children the day they were born, babies, right after they were born, out of fear of evil spirits. Those stories don't get out. He had to get up and tell them. They didn't even know that. And yet that was 3 generations ago. Today the churches are alive, powerful, effective, going all over the jungle and the countries around, looking for other tribes to share the gospel. It's a change, but this 3rd generation is having the hardest time of all, because they don't remember what it was like before the Lord came in and made all these changes in their lives.
Cries of the Jungle's goal is to bring this amazing story to you, but just as important as that is preserving the history for the younger generations of Indians. The older Indians that remember their fear-filled lifestyles are dying off, and much of their story with them. This is why we are going to translate Cries of the Jungle into Wayana, so that the Indians can always remember their history of how God's great love reached them even in the middle of the jungle.